We have our slab all nice and level and flat. We've got the surface prepared as in all of the paint's been stripped off. So we're now ready to start the tiling. So we have our surface prepped for tiling. A couple of tools we're going to use to help make the job easy. We're using a tile cutter and a mixing station for the mixing up the glue and the grout and things like that. Essentially it's just an oversized cake mixer really. So as you can see, power drill on the top, mixing blade, you're just mixing up a different cake. You're also going to need a couple of small hand tools just from your local hardware store. So a trowel, a notch trowel. You'll actually have to talk to your tile supplier to work out what sort of size notch trowel you'll need. Different materials, different tiles will need a different size notch. And then we've got the handy string line to mark out our straight lines. Good old pencils, chippy pencils, and a nice big sponge to help clean off the glue off the top of the tiles. First things first, we want to make sure that the floor is completely clean and dry. So we recommend running the vacuum cleaner over the floor one more time, just to make sure. So we're about to start laying our tiles. We're just going to measure off and mark a line on the floor on where the outside of the tile is going to be. So to measure that out, you need to take into account the size of the full tile, which in our case is 750mm, and add 5mm for a gap, which will be along that edge. So 755. We've done this up one end of the room. We've got to go down the other end, do the other one, and then lay out our string line. For the rest of this project, just to help make it easier, like any DIY project, a couple of extra set of hands always help. I've got my mate Matt along. We're just going to run out the string line and mark the nice long straight line for our first run of tiles. So before you start measuring and marking any lines, you just need to take a minute and take into account where you're going to have your full tiles and potentially which edge of the room or which edge of the area you're going to have some cut tiles to help fill the area. So ideally, your full tiles are in the most highly visible areas, so most likely opposite any doors or entry points, and or if you're up against any walls or under any furniture, that's another way you'll be able to hide the part tiles or the cut tiles. We're about to start mixing up our glue. We've got our mixing station here with it available from Kennards hire. Like I said, we worked with our tile supplier to work out the best type of glue to use for our particular tile and our particular application. We're going to have to mix up multiple buckets as we go throughout the process. So that's why we don't mix up too much at a time. That way we can keep mixing it, keeping it fresh for application. So when we showed you how to measure out and mark up your first line, we actually illustrated that on a different wall. For this actual project, we've started on this wall in front of us, and as you can see, we've already started a couple of lines. Matt's actually now going to do the hard work and trail out some of the glue. We're going to drop it on the floor, spread it out evenly with the larger trowel first, spread it out over the whole area of where the tile will be placed. So to spread it out, Matt's using the notch trowel. So you can see it's also already starting to create that texture that's going to help the tile bite into that glue. So you can see Matt's got the trowel on an angle, which allows the full profile of that notch. So we've just added a little bit more glue we've needed to spread out over that whole area of the tile. You might notice it's just in the background, we've left a bit of a gap in the corner. That's because at a later date, we're actually going to build up a bit of a landing or a small step, and we just need to leave that clear for the moment. So we're laying the tile down flat, a little bit of pressure on it to get it nice and set into the glue. We've had to use a little bit less glue. We had to lift the tile up, scrape some of the glue out from underneath, press it back down nice and firm to give it a nice even line up with the tile next to it. So we're continuing on with laying our tiles. Matt's about to lay the next lot of floor tiling glue for the next tile. As you can see, we've already done a couple of lines of tiles, and you can also see with each row of tiles that go down on the floor, you have to re-measure and remark that line on the floor to make sure you keep everything straight. As you're laying the tiles down, you need to make sure that you keep to that nice straight line. And so as you progress across the room or across the area, everything's still going to stay nice and straight and nice and parallel. So you can see the angle of the notch trowel, keeping it up nice and straight, that'll give you the full depth of the notch that's built into the trowel. Obviously, if you lay it over too flat, those notches are going to get a whole lot more shallow, and that's not the point of using that particular trowel. So Matt and I, we're going to continue tiling this main area. The main thing to remember is once you've finished laying the tiles, you've got to let them set for at least 24 hours, allow the floor tiling glue to completely set. So we're up to the stage now where we need to cut our tiles to fit into our final spots along the floor. We've used the full tiles to go over the main area, so we've just got to fill those final gaps. So you can either use a tile cutter or a tile saw. We've got a tile saw here today. Tile saw is going to give us a much more neater and cleaner finish on the edge of the tile that we cut. Tile saw comes in pieces. The stand is separate to the table itself. So you just set the stand up, table on top. So this table saw has a drip tray underneath which holds the water. A little pump drops down in the water which circulates water through the system. When the saw is in operation, helps for two reasons. Helps keep the blade cool, and then also helps suppress the dust. Even though it's the water is going to help suppress the dust, we are still just going to use a dust mask just in case, along with our regular safety gear. So we've measured the tile, we've marked out the exact size we're going to need. So just to operate the saw, it's a case of dropping the blade down into that slot and then push the tile with the tray. As you can see, it's on rollers. It'll slide back nice and straight and give you that nice clean cut. So there you go, a finished tile, beautiful clean edge, equivalent of the factory made other edges, so it's going to look just as neat. So we've finished laying all our tiles, including the cut ones up in the corner there, so we've filled the area completely now. So we just need to wait at least 24 hours for the glue to dry properly before we get into the grouting. So now our tiles have dried, we're ready for the next step, being grout. And grout being the material that's going to fill in all of these gaps and give us a nice final sealed surface over the whole area. So first step is to remove all the little spaces that we've used to correctly space out the tiles. So a couple of the tools and pieces of equipment we're going to use for the grouting. We've obviously got a bucket to mix up our grout in. So this particular material, we've taken the advice of the tile supplier, and this is the best to use for our scenario. Obviously, if you're doing a vertical wall, like a bathroom wall or something like that, it'll probably be a slightly different product, something slightly thicker, so it needs to keep shape or hold body, if you like, when it's on the wall. But since we're doing a floor, horizontal floor, something a little bit thinner, and so we're actually going to use gravity to help that feed down into the gaps. So we've got our grout mix already mixed up nice and evenly. We've got our trowel to help spread it out onto the floor. We've got a squeegee and a sponge, nice big tiling sponge. You probably grab it at the same place you grab your tiles. Nice big sponge and a second bucket of nice clean water for the final wash down. So quick tip, just before you pour the grout onto the floor, just make sure, do another quick mix so it's all nice and even. Otherwise, it'll actually start to separate a little bit. It gets a bit heavier and thicker on the bottom and all the water comes to the top. So again, just give it a quick mix up before you pour it on. Then we take our squeegee and start to work all of the grout into all the gaps. You can see the grout's actually fallen down into that gap. It's obviously a bigger gap in underneath, so we're actually going to need a little bit more grout to go back over the top and help fill that gap. So a quick handy tip as we continue to fill these gaps, just get the squeegee and tap it on a bit of an angle and work your way along. That'll help force some of these slightly thicker bits down into that gap. So chances are after you've poured the grout on, squeegeed it all around. We've got all our joins nice and at the same height, same profile as the tiles. You've probably got a little bit of excess, so that's just a case of scooping that back into the bucket. So all the gaps are filled. The next stage is to actually to wash everything off. So probably easier just to do one final squeegee over the top, get all the main leftover bits removed up off the tiles. So the final step in the process, we've simply got to wash down the excess grout. So bucket of water, nice big sponge, any sponge can do, but we actually happen to grab this from the tile supply store. Handy tip for this sponge, it actually allows you to fold it in half and you're able to wipe once, turn it over, wipe again, fold the other way, and so on. So that'll give you 4 passes of a nice clean sponge before you rinse out and do it again. So we've just finished wiping down the grout. Just have another look over the area, make sure there aren't any spots where the grout's sunken down into the gaps anymore. You might just need to fill up any of the holes. But other than that, just a case of leaving the grout to dry for at least 24 hours before you can walk on it and do your final cleaning over the top. Well, there you have it, folks, freshly tiled floor. For more information about this project and the equipment we used, including the surface preparation, don't forget to head to the Get Inspired page of the Kennards Hire website. So with that done, you're now ready for a night out on the tiles. Just remember, when using the equipment, Kennards Hire recommends the use of safety products at all times. Be sure to use the personal protective clothing and equipment for each product hired, which are available at every branch. A special thanks to our supplier, Florex Products, for their expertise and support throughout this project.
Kennards make your job easy.